What's up, guys? So, as you can see from the title of this video, this is going to be kind of a spiritual sequel to the top 10 best Marvel martial artist video that we posted a few weeks ago. Obviously, it's hosted by myself, Sammy, aka Gage. We also had a special guest, Michael, who's our main DC expert. Unfortunately, the intro audio for this video got corrupted while we were editing, so in lieu of that, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you we're using the same rules as the last list. If you'd like, you can go ahead and click that. It should appear right here. Definitely give this video a like, comment down below what you think the list should be. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let the original recording take over. Thanks, guys.
And getting started with that list, we have 4 honorable mentions. Michael, do you want to start us out with that?
Our first honourable mention to kick off this list today is Connor Hawke. I'm sure people listening that are kind of on point with the Green Arrow stuff will probably recognise the name Connor Hawke. He took over as Green Arrow for a few years when Oliver was dead, and he's touted as being far better in hand-to-hand than Ollie ever was. Unfortunately, he's more famous for losing to some of DC's biggest names, but he is certainly lauded by characters like Richard Dragon, and he has a few feats of his own that definitely deserve him being an honourable mention. Our next honourable mention on this list is Midnighter. Midnighter is utterly untouchable when it comes to hand-to-hand combat, thanks to his battle computer planted directly into his brain. The battle computer gives him precognition to an insane degree. He can process millions to nearly billions of scenarios in seconds. It lets him see how any combat scenario basically works out for him. But that being said, it's hard to really attribute that to direct martial ability, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And the characters that I brought to the honorable mentions definitely aren't lacking in terms of martial arts, but they are lacking in terms of quantifiable and consistent feats. First one's going to be David Cain. He's known as one of the greatest assassins on all of DC Earth. He's fought evenly with the likes of Deathstroke back when both were closer to being rookies. And he's kind of known as a rival to Slade in a lot of ways in the assassination world. And kind of showing his superiority to other assassins. He's completely destroyed and embarrassed Deadshot. And this was when he was starving and beaten already. He's also fought Batman consistently, and I believe he's acted as a teacher to Batman in the past. And like I said, both of my honorable mentions do lack a lot of feats, but the second one's going to be Konstantin Draken. And he probably has the least feats of any of our honorable mentions, maybe the least feats of anybody on the list. Like Connor Hawke, he's the direct superior to Green Arrow. It's going to be a kind of a theme here. He's kind of a whipping boy for this list. And he's also defeated a fellow honorable mention, Connor Hawke. But that's honestly all he's really done in terms of super impressive top-tier martial arts feats. He does have insane, basically superhuman speed, though, so that does help him a lot in terms of the martial arts realm. But getting in the proper list, Michael, do you want to start us off?
Oh, absolutely. We will start off with our number 10, and I don't think it's improper to say that our number 10 spot is immediately probably our most obscure pick for this list. Number 10 would be Sensei, or also known as O-Sensei in the post-crisis stuff. Sensei is the father of Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, doesn't matter. He has hundreds of years of training thanks to him using the Lazarus Pits in the exact same way his son does. In the pre-crisis stuff, he was famous for having resistance to possessions and would kind of stomp a lot of characters that he came across. In the post-crisis stuff, he was fantastic for overwhelming Batman and was lauded as being directly superior to Dick Grayson. He trained Bronze Tiger and trained Ra's al Ghul as well. His raw martial arts knowledge is arguably higher than those on the rest of our list. Well, not all of them, but some of them. But his age and stamina issues and lack of showings put him comfortably at our 10th spot.
And moving on from Sensei to somebody who trained him, we have number 9, Bronze Tiger. He's known as a rival to Batman, a rival to some people that are later on this list. He has extensive knowledge of nerve strikes, seems to have at least a baseline knowledge of nearly every martial art on Earth, because there's been multiple statements that he does. Obviously, we haven't seen him perform every martial art on Earth, but he is able to, as I said, be a rival to characters that are higher on this list. He also trained one of the top-tier characters in terms of martial arts in DC, somebody we're probably going to see later on this list, Richard Dragon, back earlier in his career. This is a character that scales a lot to the list, but again, doesn't have too many feats to solidify his place on the list. But we think that putting him above his teacher, Sensei, here at 9 is appropriate.
Yeah, and carrying on with our number 8 spot with Deathstroke. who honestly needs no introduction. He is perhaps the planet's most foremost assassin, certainly has possibly the best record of assassinations in DC. He is a name that pops up and always causes trouble, and not just because of his skill with rifles or assassinations in general. His hand-to-hand ability and physical prowess is almost unmatched in DC's human scope. He is most famous in terms of hand-to-hand combat of kind of having a spotless record against the Bat family. In one of his earliest appearances, I believe it was pre-Crisis, he actually beat Batman so badly that he knocked him out, which is a rarity for Bruce. He's only ever really met a match in the sense of facing Batman directly, and especially with Cassandra Cain. An interesting note is actually how Deathstroke's near superhuman biology allows someone controlling his mind to defeat Tim Drake in a direct match with a staff, which sounds maybe a bit silly, but Tim Drake is by far the best bow staff user in DC. As I said, a lot of his successes are almost partially thanks to his borderline superhuman stats, but he does have the skill to defeat multiple high-tier martial artists all at once. He did so to Green Arrow and Black Canary, and he's always been seen as a rival to David Cain, as Sammy mentioned earlier.
Yeah, exactly. And moving on to number 7 is another character who's pretty deeply connected to David Cain, is Lady Shiva. Now, a lot of people may think that she's a little bit too high on this list. I mean, a lot of people do put her above Batman. Batman has even admitted that he could only beat her through exploiting a strength advantage, though this was early on in post-Crisis. And she even trained him during Nightfall in order for him to recover and defeat Bane. A lot might also point to a recent Rebirth showing in which Shiva stated that she has pretended to lose to Bruce in the past, before neutralizing him with a single hold. I'm not entirely sure how seriously we should take that claim, but the claim does kind of show how she's portrayed by DC and DC writers. However, Bruce has one-shot a brainwashed Shiva in the past in Batman, Superman, Public Enemies, and unlike Shiva, Bruce does have a lot of ever-changing and ever-advancing martial arts, and Shiva does kind of act as more of a benchmark of a character, kind of determining who is the top untouchable tier in terms of martial arts, and whoever's under her, obviously still top tier martial artist. But she is more of a benchmark for other martial artists in the top tier, as I said. She innovated the leopard blow, an attack that's lauded as a one-hit kill even against top tier martial artists. And even other than her martial arts, she can keep up and even stomp characters like Killer Croc only using a single hand. She even mentioned that using a single hand was the way to make that fight fair. Defeated the likes of Connor Hawke in our honorable mentions, Bronze Tiger, who we heard from earlier. And she defeated Bronze Tiger before she even hit her prime, when Bronze Tiger had help from other League of Assassins members. So that's really putting into perspective how much higher Lady Shiva is than a lot of the people that we put lower on the list. And she can fight multiple top 20, top 15 martial artists at the same time if she felt like it. She's fought Batman and several versions of Robins before in the past. And she has trained a good amount of top-tier martial artists and is treated like a sort of a god of combat by other martial artists in the Marvel Universe.
So carry on from Lady Shiva, we have a number 6 spot with Batman. And I'm sure many people listening are probably surprised that he's either far higher than he should be or far lower than he deserves. But we think that this placement is pretty comfortable for him. The positions of Shiva, Deathstroke and Batman all kind of hover in a sense of quality. They can kind of go back and forward, but we feel that Bruce has the best feats consistently across the three of them. He's consistently beaten Deathstroke throughout their showings. He's famously trained and mastered at least 127 forms of martial arts, sometimes it's stated as all of them on Earth. But he's formed his own fighting style that can be almost kind of impossible to counter if you don't have a previous knowledge of who he is. He has taught some of the most impressive fighters in DC, all of the Bat family. He taught Kyle Rayner how to fight, who used his skills against Sinestro. He's taught even Superman how to handle hand-to-hand situations. He's defeated even some of the upper echelons of DC's martial artist world, from Bronze Tiger to Green Arrow, David Cain, and he has some bouts with Lady Shiva like Sammy explained. But what sets Bruce apart as well is his unconventional approach of hunting down teachers, A lot of martial artists in this list will stick to their kind of sphere of martial artists, like down David Cain or Sensei, or go to Shiva for help. But Bruce isn't afraid to go for unconventional teachers. He was trained how to box by Wildcat, he was trained how to spar by Wonder Woman, and he is very innovative in who he'll hunt down for help.
And moving on to number 5, we have a character that has been one of those teachers for Batman. It's going to be Richard Dragon. Now, this is a character who has defeated Lady Shiva consistently, and we just went through how insanely impressive that is, kind of getting past that benchmark of top tier. It's even to the point where he's been able to storm her compound at the League of Assassins unarmed and get straight to her. It was to a point where Shiva was just like, just let him through, you're not going to beat him. Once again, Connor Hawke acting as a whipping boy for the top tier. Richard Dragon completely destroyed Connor once he got serious, and Richard Dragon is honestly portrayed as the top tier in terms of martial arts teachers and martial artists in general. He's won more than one freestyle world tournament, both public and underground. He also, like Bronze Tiger earlier, has statements implying that he has baseline knowledge of every single Earth technique, including Lady Shiva's leopard blow, which he also mastered. And as I said, he's lauded as probably the greatest teacher in all of DC. He's trained Batman, Nightwing, Black Canary, Huntress, Connor Hawke. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But we don't necessarily think that he's the number one in terms of all of DC Earth. That would be our next entry.
And our next entry is very exciting. Like the Marvel video, we've kind of hit the peak of human fighters on Earth in DC. And without a doubt, this has to be Cassandra Cain, who, in terms of conventional human fighting, is unparalleled in DC. Cassandra Cain was raised from childhood. Before she could even speak or walk, she was trained for combat by her father, David Cain. David, when she was even just 7 years old, would have her killing rooms of world-renowned deadly assassins. He would shoot her with pistols just to build up her tolerance to being shot in combat, which led her to have such a high pain tolerance that she can wade through gunfire. Even if she's getting hit in the abdomen, she still pushes through like there's nothing there. And most importantly, her childhood treatment led to her developing her unique body reading technique. Lady Shiva claims to have a form of this body reading, but no one has it like Cassandra Cain. This was how Cassandra Cain operated. It was her language. She didn't speak, she read bodies. And when it comes to combat, she can essentially tell what you're going to do before you know what you're going to do. From watching videos of Batman fighting, she could perfectly emulate all 127 of his martial arts styles. In sparring matches, she's basically spanked him about the room. She's the master of nerve strikes. She's able to harm opponents that she really shouldn't be able to. She can crack apart topaz glass and concrete with her bare hands. She can dodge and weave around a weakened Supergirl. In terms of Deathstroke, I don't think any fighter on this list has such a decisive victory as Cass does. In fact, one of my favourite feats with Cassandra Cain in general was a bout that she had with Lady Shiva, where Cass had a blade embedded in her heart, I believe, and was able to take down Shiva in one punch. It gets to a certain point where Cassandra Cain's skill is almost self-explanatory. She is top dog on Earth.
Yeah, and a lot of her feats, it almost seems to the point of parody. Like, she only has high-end feats. But there is another character on this list who has insane, out-of-the-scope feats. And like we said, for this entry, we are leaving DC Earth. It's going to be number 3, Orion.
So Orion is easily our most unconventional inclusion on this list. And anyone that probably knows Orion thinks this might not be where he should be, or if he should even be on this list. But we would argue that Orion deserves special attention as one of DC's masters of combat. Known as the Dog of War throughout the Fourth World, Orion has mastered uncountable number of combat forms unique to the New Gods over thousands and thousands of years. His combative mastery has allowed him to defeat legions of apocalyptic foes, such as the Deep Six and Female Furies, long before he gained the Astro Force. And he later became the strongest and most skilled warrior of both Apocalypse and New Genesis. Sometimes he would go on training exercises to Apocalypse and wipe out hordes of parademons just through hand-to-hand combat. He has slaughtered armies of the universe's foremost warrior races, namely the Thanagarians and obviously other members of the New Gods like the Foragers, or the people of Mantis. One of his most interesting battles would be during his own titular series, where he overwhelmed Darkseid in direct combat, and doing so he usurped the throne of Apocalypse. His martial forms will not have names in the sense that we're used to from Earthbound heroes. You can't point to him and say that he's trained in karate or anything, but through his feats and how he fights, it is evident that he is not a mindless brawler. He's clearly one of the greatest combatants in the DC universe, and should be here.
Yeah, he's a character that's almost above the concept of martial arts. He's just a warrior in every sense of the word. And that is just like our number 2, who isn't necessarily above the nomenclature of martial arts, but is definitely a warrior. That's going to be number 2. Wonder Woman, Diana Prince. Now, she's kind of the reason that we called Cassandra Cain the peak of conventional martial artists on Earth, because Wonder Woman, when you see Wonder Woman, you don't think martial artist. But she is insanely skilled. She's able to spar with rosters of the Justice League that include Cosmic Plus level characters only using her skill and blindfolded, and she was adapting just fine until Batman came and kind of matched her martial arts prowess. But this was, reminder, while she was fighting other Justice League members. And even after that, she was still kind of able to bring them to a stalemate by the end. And a good example of her skill would be in her fight with Power Girl. Despite the fact that Power Girl's stats should be kind of relative to Diana herself, she was just completely helpless due to the difference in raw experience. And this difference in experience can be exploited to the point where Wonder Woman can fight multiple Kryptonians and Lanterns at the same time, even characters who should be stronger than her. And she was even able to fight a group of 6 characters who possessed the same stats that she did. Now, obviously, she lost since it's a 6 versus 1, but the fact that she was able to keep up with characters who were her equal physically kind of shows the ability of her to bridge the gap in stats with raw skill. And even characters on this list have admitted inferiority to Wonder Woman in the past, namely Bruce himself, Batman. He stated that she was the best melee fighter in all of Earth, and there was a point in her continuity where she lost her godlike power, and even then she was able to liberate entire galaxies and create a name for herself across the universe. So not even taking into account her centuries and centuries of training, definitely just a warrior at heart, and literally has been training all day, every day for those centuries to be the best combatant on Earth.
So it's certainly one thing for Wonder Woman to be the greatest combatant on Earth, but it's an entirely different thing to be lauded as the greatest combatant in the universe. And that's what we have for our number 1 spot, which is indisputably Karate Kid. Now, despite his name obviously being evocative of the 80s action series, Karate Kid has been the irrefutable master of combat in DC Comics since his appearance in the 50s, or 60s, I believe. In all of his incarnations, Val Armor is shown to have mastered almost every form of fighting throughout the universe of the 30th or 31st centuries. The difference in time is just dependent on what incarnation of the Legion of Superheroes you're looking at. But no matter what form of the team, he is always shown to be travelling the cosmos in search of new fighting forms. And between these ventures, he uses his prowess to achieve feats he simply shouldn't be able to, because outright admittance, the things he does just through martial ability is mind-boggling. From shattering mountains with punches, glaciers as well, he can nullify energy fields, all because of how he claims he can see weak points through his martial training. He generally just outclasses all of his peers in any matchups. In fact, one of his earliest spotlight issues was letting Superboy join the Legion of Superheroes because he actually sparred so well with Karate Kid. That is not a mistake. He is a human man who, through martial expertise, can fight with Kryptonians like Superboy or Daxamites like Mon-El. He dodges around their heat vision. He can avoid lightning born from the Speed Force. In terms of some of his more conventional fights, he has absolutely embarrassed Batman, which sounds not like too much of a feat considering his placement on this list, but there's not really any other fighter here that could embarrass Batman to the point where he has to call for backup. And this feat of him calling for help and taking Karate Kid down with Black Lightning was also during a period in time where Karate Kid was mind-controlled. He had no memory of who he was or even what he could really do. His grappling is so potent that he can neutralise Kryptonians, as we've said, in one encounter with Mon-El, he tossed him through into another solar system just by using Mon-El's own momentum. One of my favourite moments was when there's a scan of Mon-El full on bloodlusty charging straight at his face, and it reminds Karate Kid of this time he was training with arrows and just dodges out the way. It's insane. He is the character that can fight S tiers like Superman just because he's so good at martial arts.
Yeah, and just the very fact he was able to kind of look back on training memories while he was being blitzed by a faster than light character, that very fact alone, honestly, would put him at the top of this list.
Absolutely, yeah, it is mind blowing.
Yeah, that's our list. Definitely give us a comment for your list or any characters that you think that we missed on ours. Give us a like, a share, all that good YouTube stuff. And did you have anything else to say on the list today, Michael?
No, but it was really fun to go through these fighters, and I hope the list was, unexpected enough to be interesting.
Yeah, and extensive enough with all the obscure characters that we had to scrounge together feats for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, guys, definitely, like I said, give us a like, give us a follow on all their platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We're slowly trying to build our following on other platforms. We're at Big Battle Boys on all of those platforms, but for now, I think we're done with this video. So thanks for watching, and thanks for coming with me today, Michael.
And thanks for having me on. We'll see you in the next one.
All right, guys, see ya.